first just tell us who you are.
Hi, my name is Alice. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and I'm visiting San Francisco on holiday.
Great. And in Melbourne, what do you do?
I work at a university in Melbourne.
Oh, what kind of work at the university?
I'm a finance officer at the university.
Cool. And then also like in Australia, in Melbourne, what are some of your like 3 favorite things that you do when you're not at work?
I really like hanging out with friends in cafes, drinking Melbourne coffee, going perfume shopping, and just hanging out, going to the Royal Botanic Gardens in Melbourne.
So we know that you collect perfume. Are there other things that you collect or just love and pursue?
Books. I have unfortunately had to sort of slow down buying books just because there is a space issue. So now I tend to just limit my collection to hardbacks that I really, really love. But I used to collect books. Even books I really, really hated, I thought it was important to keep them because they were sort of a piece of my, personal reading history. And I think the books that are least valuable are the ones that I quite felt ambivalent about. The books I loved and I hated, I've kept because they're sort of important because it's something that you have a strong reaction to is important.
Do you do the same thing with perfume? Do you keep perfume that you don't love?
Yes, I do. So I tend to have quite quick instincts when I smell a perfume, and I have bought things that I've smelled untested. I've bought things that I've never smelled before. But sometimes I've really disliked a perfume and I like to keep it. So I've never really on-sold anything or sort of just passed it on to friends, really, because I like to think about it. Sometimes I have to experience perfume for the whole year, go through all the seasons, all different kinds of weather with the perfume. And some of my favorite perfumes I had to wear, they were difficult and challenging perfumes, and I had to wear quite a few times before I understood them. And there are some notes that I found really, really difficult. And then there were some gateway perfumes that I wore, and then I just grew to love the note. And there are notes that you sort of have to work hard to love. Immortelle is a note that does not agree with me. I hate it, but in the back of my mind, I think maybe one day I might learn to love it, or I might find a perfume with Immortelle that works for me.
What are some of the notes that you initially hated and you now love?
Some of my friends find it hard to believe, but I initially found tuberose very hard because I first smelt it in, I think you call it fracas.
Yeah.
And it was just really, really, really bombastic. I had a terrible memory. Actually, it's a good memory now, but during university I tried it on. I wore it. It was a hot day and I wore it to a toot in uni, and it was terrible because it just expanded through the entire room, and it was all you could smell, and it was a small windowless room with all the doors closed, no air conditioning. So anyone who knows that fragrance is probably shuddering in horror now. But later on, it's actually one of the perfumes that I love most now, just through wearing and understanding, and never wearing again in a small enclosed space.
I had the same experience with spilling Angel on myself and then going to the movies.
Oh.
I felt really guilty.
Did you feel mortified?
I was mortified, absolutely. And then could we just hear about one more that maybe you didn't like and now you...
Oud. I think oud is a difficult note to love, especially because I'm still not 100% sure what oud actually smells like, because most of the things that are marketed as it are sort of interpretations, synthetics, but mostly I think it's inspired by oud, what seems to be on the market. It was very fashionable for a number of years, I think. I have since actually smelt actual oud in its pure form, which was quite interesting. And then I've since smelt it in where the actual oud oil was used in perfumes, and I discovered it was quite beautiful. But that is I think that was hard to really know what it was supposed to smell like beyond a fashion statement or a marketing gimmick.
Completely agree. Next time you're in the city, in San Francisco area, there's an oud bar in the East Bay where you can go and smell oud, a bunch of different ouds. So one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you is because you brought forth something we were already thinking about, was just getting a chance for internationally the community of perfume lovers to get to know a little bit about each other and what drives them to love perfume and experience perfume and even sometimes obsessively collect it. And so we were just wondering, how did this start for you? Have you always loved scent? Was it from a parent, or how did you fall in love?
I think I've always loved it. When I was little, I really loved especially perfume bottle miniatures. So when relatives would go to the airport, they would bring back just little miniatures, and it was, you know, appropriate gift for a little girl because they were little 5 ml beautiful bottles. And I think there was one perfume I smelt in a Christian Dior set. It was Miss Dior. And I think when I got older, I realized that a lot of people thought it was quite an old-fashioned scent. But when I was little, it was called Miss Dior. So I thought, as you know, between the ages of 5 to 10, for instance, I thought this is the perfume for me. And there was something about it when I smelt it. It was just, magical, transformative, and I think that's my first perfume memory.
And then did you continue to pursue perfume from that point on? Or was there a gap? I know for me there was a gap.
No, well, I always loved perfume, and I would go to department stores with my mother, and in particular I used to smell Guerlain perfumes, which I just felt a connection to. So that probably took me to my teenage years, which is when I started earning money. So I think really perfume collecting and wearing took off once I had an income.
How do you wear it?
I prefer to spray on my wrists and sometimes on my neck. I've started trying to layer with an oil and then spraying on top to see if it would project more or have better longevity. But I also really enjoy wearing several perfumes in one day, and there are some fragrances I have which just last for 3 days. But one of my favorite things to do is have a morning perfume and maybe an evening perfume, and I like smelling the change in the day.
Me too. And how do you pick what you're going to wear in a day or evening?
That is very hard. I think because I have a lot of bottles of perfume, I tend to rotate them and move them around. How I pick perfume each day is just really how I feel that day. I kind of feel like it's what sort of makeup, what color lipstick am I going to wear that day, and sometimes something just feels right and you just know. But mostly I do like to keep a few bottles that are quite close, sort of on my dresser, so it's quite easy to see at a glance what I have and what in that range I could wear. A lot of it tends to be seasonal, so I rotate what I have on hand.
And how many bottles do you have, if you don't mind us asking?
I didn't know until recently how many bottles I had until I sort of recorded them on an app and started writing them down. I think it might be 450, maybe.
Okay. And are there specific lines that you're still gravitating toward? Guerlain obviously is one of them.
Yes. I really love, I've just discovered at your lovely store, I think it's called Bruno Fazzolari. As soon as I smelt it, I just felt like this was my perfume. Guerlain, yes, is another one I've gravitated towards. I think L'Artisan Parfumier is one that I've really found a lot of things I love just because I felt like they did a really, really wide range of scents.
How do you store your perfumes?
I know people argue about how to store perfumes, but I tend to just store them in the dark. Sometimes in boxes, even the ones that are on my dresser, I try to keep in their boxes so they're not in direct light.
I want to just get a few thoughts of yours around the emotional experience of perfume.
Okay, I think perfume for me is really, really emotional and instinctive. I know there are people who really know a lot about notes, and people who are really, really good at scenting particular notes in a perfume. Like they'll instantly know, oh, there's vetiver in this. I think just through smelling perfumes, I can identify notes to an extent, but that's not the primary focus for me. When I'm reading about a new perfume, I look at the notes, but sometimes I know perfumes have surprised me with what's been listed and how notes are treated. And one of the most exciting things is to say osmanthus. I've always thought it smelled like that, but then someone has added something else to it, like oud. And it's just the change in that note. I couldn't have predicted how that would have smelt. So I just think, in my experience, for me personally, notes in fragrances are not the most important thing. Sometimes I just smell something and you sort of feel it you just feel a connection. It's like meeting someone for the first time, and sometimes there's just an instant rapport. I think fragrance is like that. So this is Giverny in Bloom by Dawn Spencer Horowitz. For me, instantly I smell green. I just smell a beautiful blend of florals, and my first thought is that I haven't got a lot of green in my collection, and that I've actually found it difficult to find really, really beautiful green perfumes, especially ones that are as sort of delicate and balanced as this one. So I first smelled this very, very recently, and I just, something about it clicked for me. Both, I guess, I could see where it fit in my collection, and that I didn't have something like this, but also in my experience, it wasn't something that I come across a lot. So this is Jimmy by Bruno Fazzolari, I think it's called. And the first thing I thought when I smelt this was just how beautiful it was. The florals, everything was so seamless. I could smell the individual, a lot of the individual notes, but nothing screamed, look at me, look at me. It was just overall so balanced. And I do have a hard time wearing and finding florals I love. So for me, this just immediately, I just felt something for this fragrance. And it's hard to describe, but sometimes you smell a fragrance and you just think, this is the one for me, or I really connect with this aesthetic. So for me, this was just one of those fragrances, and when I smelled other fragrances in the line, I just instantly sort of felt a kinship with it, as strange as that sounds. And it was, I just knew even the ones that I didn't love, I had something I really admired about it.
You're a celebrity.